Hello everybody, Doug Anderson here at Town Hall Theater, and I'm excited to talk to you about a project I'm involved in, which is a course on the history of the Hollywood musical. Every film has a backstory, a story about how it was made, what was happening in Hollywood at the time, the stories of the people in the film, the stories of what was happening in the nation at the time. And so I'm teaching this course where we're going to be talking about some iconic Hollywood films, but also we're going to put them in a kind of context. So I'll talk about a film, I'll lecture for about an hour, filling in all this background, and then we watch the film on the big screens here at Town Hall Theater. And if you've unpacked a film that way and its history, watching the film becomes, I think, a much more meaningful and interesting experience. Let me give you some examples. So we're going to start in 1954 with one of the greatest film musicals ever made, A Star is Born, starring Judy Garland. For me, this is the story of the studio system, which ruled Hollywood from about 1930 to 1950. And these were the major companies like Paramount and Warner's, and especially MGM, run by Louis B. Mayer. If you signed on with MGM, they ruled your life. They own you. And Judy Garland signed on with MGM when she was 13 years old. And from that point in, they controlled every aspect of her life. What she looked like, what her nose looked like, her weight. She was actually told to start smoking cigarettes so she'd be film thin. As a teenager, they were making her work on 3 films simultaneously. So she'd be on the soundstage for 4 hours, then they would give her barbiturates to put her to sleep. She'd sleep for 4 hours, then they'd give her uppers, amphetamines, so she could go right back out and be Judy Garland. They destroyed her childhood. It's a fascinating story. They literally told people, you have to get an operation because we're going to chop off some weight, or we're going to, no, you cannot have that baby. You have to have an abortion, which happened to Judy Garland, because you're the sweetheart of America. You can't go around having babies. It's a fascinating story about the enormous power of the studio system. And what's really interesting, and so this is Judy Garland's last film. It's her last film because she's been pretty much destroyed by the system that now is throwing her out because she's too difficult to work with, because she's addicted to drugs and alcohol. But what makes it particularly poignant is that this film is about the Hollywood system. It's about how Hollywood can destroy people. And so once you know the background, you can see kind of a transparency between the film itself and the story of Judy Garland in Hollywood. So that's where we're going to begin. We're then going to move on to the 1968 film Funny Girl, starring Barbra Streisand. For me, this is a story about who gets to be in movies. There's a very uneasy relationship between the Broadway musical and the Hollywood musical. You could be a huge star on Broadway, but Broadway, especially the 40s and 50s, was really very provincial. If you didn't live on the Eastern Seaboard, you probably didn't see a Broadway show. So you have people who were major stars on Broadway, like Ethel Merman, who never made it into film. Hollywood didn't want her. People in Wisconsin did not know who she was. And besides, she was a little too scary for film anyway. So you get her in something major like Annie, Get Your Gun, or she's just absolutely celebrated all over New York. But somebody named Betty Hutton makes the movie because she was already sort of a name and a star. Or I think of Carol Lawrence in West Side Story, who was absolutely magnificent as Maria on Broadway, triple threat, actor, singer, dancer, but nobody knew who she was. So, of course, Natalie Wood makes it in the film, a musical. Natalie Wood can't even sing, but Hollywood wanted her over the star who made it on Broadway. The reason why I bring all of this up is that Barbra Streisand broke that glass ceiling. Little known fact, huge star as Funny Girl, nominated for a Tony, celebrated all over New York. Nobody in Hollywood wanted her. Why? She didn't look right. This isn't a conventional beauty. Take that any way you want to take it. She looked all wrong. And none of the producers wanted her. It was only one person, Ray Stark, who fought for her and fought for her. Finally, she was allowed to make that movie. Of course, she wins the Oscar for Best Performance. She goes on to have a very elaborate Hollywood career. But who gets to be in movies? Who decides who gets to movies? That's part of the story of Funny Girl. And of course, it's interesting because that film is about Fanny Brice, another unconventionally looking woman, not a conventional beauty, who had to fight her way through vaudeville and the theater in the early part of the century. We then move on to Cabaret, 1972. Of course, the Bob Fosse film won 8 Oscar awards, starring Joel Grey and Liza Minnelli. Once the 60s happen, what's a Hollywood musical supposed to look like? We've had the Vietnam War, we've had Watergate. People aren't necessarily ready for the sweetness and light anymore of a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, Climb Every Mountain, et cetera, et cetera. So it's probably not surprising that in 1972 we get a film about Hitler and Nazism and tyranny. And why that film at that time, it was incredibly timely. And I'm afraid that as we look at it, it's still probably pretty timely today. So this is the kind of unpacking of the film, getting into the background, the personalities, the stories, spending about an hour doing that, and then watching the film on our big screens makes it a much more interesting experience. So this all begins on February 11th, 7 p.m. on Wednesdays. I like to say, what else are you doing on Wednesday nights in the middle of winter? This is a wonderful reason to get out and have an amazing experience. And the new wrinkle this time is that we will be streaming my lectures. So you can be all over the country, all over the world. You could be in Florida. I see you, Florida people. I know you're there. You can still take part in this class by streaming my lecture, and then anybody can go on Amazon Prime or Apple TV or whatever and then stream these films at home. So it can be a complete experience for those of you who don't happen to be in Addison County. Obviously, I think you can tell I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about getting back to these stories that maybe you've never heard before and showing these remarkable, iconic films that I'm sure it's been a long time since you've seen them. So I hope you'll join me. Hope to see you in February. Thanks a lot.